Hey, everybody, it's Becky Drose. Thank you for listening to the Gorilla HR podcast. Today, I have an interesting study that I came across, and I don't know, my mind was kind of blown when I read it. And so I want to share it with you today. So I read this study, and it's from 1995, and it was conducted by the Harvard School of Public Health. And so back in 1995, they asked all of these people, it was faculty, it was students, it was staff, so all different kinds of people involved with Harvard. And they gave them this survey of 12 different questions. And the questions had two different options. And it was like, would you prefer option A or would you prefer option B? And they asked them to pick from these choices. And some of them were items where you were better off than everybody else, basically positional. So, like, you were doing better than the people around you, whether it was your looks, your income, your education, et cetera, et cetera. And then they had a second choice, and the second choice was a little bit more altruistic. And so the option in the second choice is where the situation was better for everybody. Like, you were all beautiful and you all had lots of money and things like that. And so in this study, they sat them down, they had these 12 separate questions where you're picking A or B, and you're just doing, which one do you prefer? And there was one question in here that just like blew my mind. So here is the question that they were answering. So again, they're picking between option A and option B. So the first one is option A. Your current income is $50,000 and the other people around you earn $25,000. So option A, you basically have a salary of 50K, but everybody else is only making 25K. That's your first choice. And then your second choice, you have an annual income of $100,000, but everybody else is earning $200,000. So option B, you're making 100K, but everybody else around you is making 200K. So you had to choose whether you would rather be making 50 and everybody else is making less, or you're making 100, but everybody else is making more. And in these two options, the purchasing power is the same. So it's not like different times. It's like, what $50,000 would buy compared to $200,000, like all that, being equal, being the same kind of thing. So buying power is the same between the two options. Take a guess in your mind. How many people chose option A? Again, option A, people are making less than you. Option B, you're all making more, but people are making more than you. What do you think it is? 50-50. 50% of people chose the option where they said, you know what, I will take $50,000 if it means everybody around me is making less than me. Whereas only half said, yeah, I want to be making 100,000 because the other people around me are making 200,000. Oh my God, you have a choice of saying like you earn 50 or 100, and people said that they would rather have less money. They would rather have 50% of that money just because from a positional standpoint, they would be making more. And so when I saw this again, my mind was blown, but then I also thought, oh my God, this just explains the world to me. Now I understand why our country, our democracy, our economy, why we are in the position we are in. And because I think it's a much bigger thing than just the dollars, right? Essentially, what it is saying is that half of those people really felt like relative status, how they are doing compared to other people, is more important than the overall how is everybody doing and that everybody could be doing better. So I I I'm like at a loss for words now. I just don't understand, right? Like, oh my God, 50,000 or 100,000. My mind is still just so blown. So it kind of led me to think about the workplace and how could we apply this. So of course, if you've listened to me, you know that I've talked about compensation. And I would say, let's not differentiate because we want to make somebody feel good based on their comp. I would, of course, talk all about pay equity and market analysis and all that good stuff that says figure out what a job is worth and pay it. But what I think is important here is that people want to know that they're needed and appreciated. And so that's kind of my translation of status. So you want to be doing better than other people. But I think in the work context, we can turn that into I need you, I appreciate you, you're a valued part of this team. And so I'm going to do things that show you that compared to other people, you're important. So I think it kind of goes without saying that employees who are more engaged, who are appreciated, are better performers, they're more productive, right? The company is going to perform better overall because you have people who are engaged and who have that relationship. So again, when I think about that study and kind of thinking about what can we do, I think it's important to know again that people do want to be needed and they do want to be appreciated and that everybody has value in their different way. And so it's letting people know that you value them in those different ways to help them feel more engaged. So I was just kind of thinking about some of the things that I've seen in my career or that I have experienced in talking to other people and things that we can do to make people feel that status, to make them feel special in the workplace. I will say that when we do that, we need to make sure that we are authentic and we also need to know our audience. So, years ago, my husband had a boss, and we would occasionally get together with a boss and his family. Like they were lovely people. We weren't best friends or anything like that, but we would occasionally get together. So there was like that little bit of camaraderie outside of their professional relationship. So that was nice. Except that one day my husband came home and he was like, yeah, my boss gave me this book for you. I threw it out. I'm not even giving it to you, but it's so bizarre that I have to tell you about it. So for those of you who don't know me personally or haven't seen pictures, I'm fat. I got a small waist and a big juicy booty and hips. And so I am overweight, no doubt about it. I own it. I'm not ashamed of it. Nothing wrong there. But this boss that my husband had was also overweight, although I will say certainly not as cute as me. But he gave my husband a book about weight loss to give to me. So, in his attempt to authentically connect with my husband, he gave my husband a book to give to me about how I should lose weight. And so I would say in that context, knowing your audience and being authentic kind of backfired because I'm telling you this story now and then like, oh my God, I can't believe that somebody would give me a book about how to lose weight, somebody that like I don't know well in that context. So making people feel needed and appreciated, know your audience, know what they would care about. I will say that was not it. Telling your wife how to lose weight and giving her a book, that is not going to create the engagement and goodwill that I think he may have been going for. So when I say that we need to have some good, authentic connection, in order to do that, the first thing is that you have to get to know people. And when I talk about these things, it doesn't just have to be if you're a manager. You might be able to do these things with your peers because, of course, making people feel needed and appreciated is not something that's just left to management or leadership, but it can really be those leaders who are your peers as well. So when I start in a new company or when I'm engaging with a new client, I always take little notes. So in that little small talk period, if somebody tells me that they did something over the weekend, or I find out if they're married, like I make a little note and I write down their spouse's name or I write down their kids' names because I come across a lot of different people. And I'm going to admit that I can't remember all of it. I don't remember it the first time. So I take my little notebook and I write down something about them so I can figure out what are they into. If I know what they get at Starbucks when we go out for coffee, or I know that they're a tea drinker instead, I make a little note to myself because then when I see them again, if I want to take a gift or I say I want to meet them for somewhere, or I'm going to, bring them a little treat, then I know something that they like. So take notes, get to know people, express genuine curiosity. I'm not saying like, go full inquisitive, like you're conducting some sort of criminal investigation. Nothing like that. But just at a general level, as you come across people and as you engage with them, take little notes so you know what they are. Actually, it's kind of funny because when I was leaving, one of my last companies, I had some pages in my notebook and I was telling some of my peers like, oh, here are my notes from when I first met you. And it was kind of funny because they all clamored around and they were like, oh, what did you say about me? What did you write about me? What did you write down? And I was like, well, here I wrote down your husband's name, but I wasn't sure if you said it this way or that way. So I made a note about that. And I wrote down that you are a Diet Coke drinker. And so it was just kind of funny because like they didn't realize that in order for me to build that authentic connection, that at first I had to take some notes because there was no way I was going to remember. So however you have to do it, get to know people, know what their interests are, know what they like. And if you can't remember it, take some notes on it. So make it personal, make it authentic. One of the other things that we can do to let people know that they're appreciated is to be very generous with our time. We are all so busy. We all have a lot going on. And I know in the context of work, especially with a lot of professionals that I work with, they're at their computer, they might have a text, they might have email, they might have calls. There's always something going on. There's some kind of disruption. And so one of the tricks that I learned from a peer years ago is that when somebody stops by to see you or if they stop by your office or they're calling you, whatever it is, she would often put up a finger and say, wait, give me just 1 second. I'd stick my head in the door and start talking. And she would just say, hold on, hold on. I want to give you my full attention. And she would just put up her hand and say, give me a second. And she would finish her email, her call, whatever the thing was that she was engaged with. And then she could stop and say, okay, now you have my attention. So instead of trying to multitask or to be answering people's questions or engage in conversation and be doing other things at the same time, be generous with your attention. Stop what you're doing and focus on that other person. The other part of giving your attention is in actually making time to talk to people. And this works whether you're in an in person environment or even in a remote environment. One of the things that we need to do is when we have those one-on-ones scheduled, which everybody does, every manager I have ever worked for, and I've done it with every employee I've ever had. We have these recurring one-on-one meetings set up. And if you're like me, you have probably experienced where something else comes up, either for the manager or for you, and suddenly those one-on-ones are getting pushed off. Or the manager is saying, hey, I've got a conflict, but is there anything you needed to talk to me about? Talk to me right now. And so we schedule these meetings that should have some intention and should have an agenda and should have things that we want to accomplish. But what ends up happening is that we let other things take priority and we push off those one-on-ones. So in order to make people feel special, in order to let them know their status in your realm of work or even in your relationships, make sure that when you schedule those meetings and you schedule that time, whether it's recurring or you set it up ad hoc, stick to it. Pick that time, schedule that time, put everything else down, and give that person your attention. It's so frustrating. I still hear it from other professionals now that say, yeah, I had a one-on-one scheduled and my boss just canceled it. Or there was something that I did kind of want to talk to them about, but it's not important enough to bring it up outside of this, but I thought that would be a great opportunity. So be generous with your time, keep those one-on-ones, and engage in that dialogue with your people. One of the other things that we can do to make our people feel special is to look for opportunities for them to develop their skills. We know from the data that when people are looking at different jobs, one of the things that they value is the opportunity to grow. So I know, of course, I'm always talking about the comp piece, and people certainly want more money. But one of the other things that we see is people are like, hey, what else can I do? How can I advance? And so one of the things that you can do to help people understand that they're important to you is to look for some of those opportunities for them to develop. Is there a class they can take? And it can be something cheap. It doesn't have to be a big expense, whether it's something that's online, virtual, something they can go to. Is there something that they can do to advance their skills? Maybe if you've had somebody who has done a good job and they've been performing and you want to help give them an opportunity by giving them a chance to participate on a project, jump into something that's maybe above their level, that will also let them know that you value them and give them that chance to continue to grow. It doesn't just have to be in that capacity of professional skills either. Maybe you have somebody and you know that they like doing decorating or they like picking out things for their cubicle and they have a nice little workstation. Maybe if you're getting ready to do some revamp, maybe you're replacing chairs in your reception area or you need help picking out something for the conference room. Maybe ask that person to do it. Maybe you send that person off to go get some new lamps because you have a new executive and you're getting an office set up. Whatever it is, look for things where people are into it and give them that opportunity to say, oh, yeah, this is something different. This is something where I'm special, and let them do it. One of the things that I used to do when I had people that were directly working for me is I would always bring in little gifts and things, and not big expensive things. I'm not talking any big fancy corporate thing. But one is if you ever attended a conference or a meeting, there's always swag. I have taken lip balm and little teddy bears with HR shirts and pens and notebooks and all of these different things. And I still get so much of that stuff, and I don't need it. I don't need 50 little notebooks with some company's logo on it. And so when you have the opportunity to get some of that swag, take some of that stuff back to people, spread it around, let people say, yeah, here's something I've got. It's obvious that you didn't necessarily pay for that, but they may have appreciation for it. So take some of those things. You can also do it with little food and snacks. I used to have an employee who was a huge Diet Coke and chocolate consumer, so loved Diet Coke and ate candy while doing it. And so if I stopped and got something for myself, maybe I went out and got something for lunch, or maybe I stopped and got coffee somewhere. It didn't hurt and it didn't cost a lot to buy a Diet Coke and a candy bar just to take back and say, hey, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. So whatever that thing is that they're into, whatever they like, you can bring that back. You can give that to them, and that can let them know that they're important to you, that you thought about them, and that they value what you're doing. One of the other things that I used to do and that I've seen other organizations implement in really successful ways is to send letters home, to write letters to people. We often start with that email, which is a great communication tool, and it's better than nothing. I always tell people that to keep a little file for themselves. And so I would say if you get an email where you got kudos, whether it was from a boss or a client, whatever the situation was, somebody said, good job for something, save those because it feels good to get those. Like make that little file for yourself so that if you need a little pick me up, maybe you're having a bad day, you look at it and you say, oh, look, I am making a difference for people. People do value the work that I'm doing. That's something that can make you feel special and give you some of that status. Of course, that can also be really helpful if you're doing your performance evaluation and you're looking for information to include. So keep that little file, keep those things. But even to go above and beyond that is to do little handwritten notes or send letters home. So I've used this even in production and manufacturing environments. And you can do it cheaply. You can buy fancy cards. You can just print some cards. It doesn't have to be high cost, but to take a little note. And what I would do is I would ask the managers, and I included myself in the group, to say, find somebody who did something right, who did something well, who had some sort of accomplishment, and write them a little note. And if you need help because you're not a person with a lot of words and you don't know what to say, then think about the core values of the organization. Pick one and say, hey, that was a great way to demonstrate that core value. So you don't have to spend a lot of time writing it or a lot of time thinking about it, but look for something that somebody has done well. And what we would do is we would mail those cards home. And so that individual could see in front of their family and show them like, look, I got this card. I got this thank you note. I got this recognition from my colleagues and from my bosses. And I know that they appreciate me. By sending it home, it put it in front of not just that employee, but it let them see in front of their family that somebody else was thinking of them and valuing them. So that was really an awesome, really easy, really cheap, but very meaningful technique to let people know that they were appreciated. One of the other things that we can do is simply just making eye contact with people and smiling, giving them your attention, giving them courtesy. I think that we're in a time where we don't always see a lot of courtesy, and we're seeing a lot of situations where things are getting more tense and people are frustrated with each other. And I think part of that just comes down to the world that we're in right now. But I think just by smiling and nodding and being friendly, that can go a long way in letting people know that they're important. I had a company a couple of years ago that I did some work with, and we had an executive who would often just go down the hall and not really stop and engage with people. And so for a lot of us, myself included, it was like, okay, I guess I'm not important enough to even like look at and smile. And so that was something that I kind of learned on the negative side of how much I really valued that. Not that I expect that person to stop and have a full-on conversation, but just to give people a little bit of eye contact, give them a smile, give them a nod, whatever it is. And I know for some people that might be something where it's not really a comfortable thing. Maybe eye contact is not something that they do naturally, but whatever it is in their way to engage and just say, hey, I acknowledge you, I acknowledge your presence. And then you can extend that into how much you value that individual or what they're doing for the organization. Essentially, in this day and age, I think that people really are feeling bad and they really are feeling like, there's so much going on and they just want to know that they are needed, that they are appreciated, and that somebody is thinking about them. So look for those genuine connections. Look for those things that make you jump out and say, okay, I'm not just alone here. I'm not just doing this work just for a paycheck, but that it is truly appreciated. And of course, silent gratitude doesn't help anybody. So whatever it is, even just giving a thank you, let people know, say thank you. Those are really powerful words. Let people know that you appreciate them and the things that you're doing. In this world, we need to stick together. We need to take care of each other. And if you give me the choice between $50,000 or $100,000, I'm going to take that $100,000. And I'm glad that you're doing well and that you're making more than me, but I'm going to take that money. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to the Guerrilla HR podcast. I hope you all have a great day.
That's it for this episode of the Guerrilla HR podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@guerrilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time.